Hello and welcome back to Books and Beer. We're still here at Salty Nut Brewery, and today we're enjoying a pastry stout called Berried Away. And to go with it, we have several choices of things for you to read. Do you want to start, Lauren?
Sure. I'm a big fan of murder mystery, and two of the books I chose in that genre just because it's October now and it's Halloween time, and I love murder mysteries. We always do murder mysteries birthday parties at my house every year. So this is definitely one of my favorite genres. I've read a lot in them. I'm going to start with this one, The Guest List by Lucy Foley. It is actually a new release. It's one of those books where once you're done reading it, you just want to turn around and read it again because suddenly you're realizing all these things that are happening. You know, you think back on them and realize you just didn't catch it the first time. But Reese Witherspoon, this is her one of her book picks, and I love it. I've recommended it to so many people already. And if you like kind of like the Agatha Christie Murder on the Orient Express kind of thing where who did it, you know, all these people are stuck on an island, there's a murder, somebody did it. And they are still on the island with you. It's wonderful. So it's actually a wedding that is taking place on a remote island. And the groom is this like D-rated reality show star, really charming though, and really good looking. And his soon-to-be bride is this successful entrepreneur, Jules. And so they invite their closest friends and family, and the whole book takes place over 48 hours. And so it goes from this beautiful, you know, island that they're all showing up on to a storm approaching, of course, because there's about to be a murder, so they has to be a storm.
Obviously.
But the point of view switches from 6 different people throughout the story, so it's really neat because you'll start seeing it from the bridesmaid's point of view, and then you'll see the story from the bride, and then the groom, best man, wedding planner. It just switches around, and you start realizing there's a lot of buried secrets, kind of like the Berried Away stout we're drinking right now.
Nice.
But yeah, so the island slowly turns into a more rugged environment. You start realizing that all this beautifulness of the castle and everything and wilderness is actually a little scary. You throw in a ghost story about the island where everyone's kind of already on edge, and it's a very slow burn, but it's a fast read. So I would highly recommend this if you want something to read this October for Halloween.
Great.
Now this next book, The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. If I had 3 books to read the rest of my life, this would be one of them. I read this book 2 years ago when it first came out, and I've read it probably 2 more times since. It's a really interesting take on murder mysteries in that the guy, the narrator, every day he wakes up in a different person's body. So he hears their thoughts, and he recreates the same day because Evelyn Hardcastle dies 7.5 times. So you get it from 7 different point of views. And even though some of these people are really, really awful people, you realize they're not the murderer. And he's trying to save Evelyn through the whole time. He's trying to figure out who murders her so he can stop it. But then as you get closer to the end, you're wondering if he really does need to save Evelyn after all. And and then like the ending is just a total 180. It's great. I love this one. But yeah, definitely grab yourself a beer, get a comfy chair. I think you could probably finish this in a day. It's a very fun read. This last one, I wanted a good chaser, something happy, because of course these all end in murder. Curt Sittenfeld writes some really fun fiction, and this one is her modern adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. And so we leave jolly old England and we go to Cincinnati, Ohio, and the story takes place with younger sisters who are all into CrossFit. The Jane character is a yoga instructor who just turned 40, and her mom's trying to marry them all off. So it's a very similar plot. The wit of Jane Austen is in here. I loved how she wrote it. I've read this book before, but this time I decided to try it on one of our Playaways, which are these really cool devices like this size. It's kind of like an MP3 player from,
Oh,
from
cool.
like college days. But all it does is has one book in it. You just plug in your headphones, put it in your pocket, and you can go anywhere with it. And you can also plug it into your car. I listened to it in my car this weekend, actually, using an audio cable. But these things, you can find the Playaways over there by the audiobooks, and really cool, nifty devices. So, but all these books are available in book format, in Hoopla, and some are on Playaway or audiobooks. So,
Great.
yeah.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, it was fun reading these.
It sounds like it. And now for something completely different.
A kid's book.
A kid's book! Like I said last time, I'm really into trying to find good kids' books these days. So I'm starting my please read these list with a kid's book. And I'm really glad we had a beer called Berried Away this time because it let me showcase this book I found called The Blacker the Berry. And it's poems. It's a picture book poem with poems by Joyce Carol Thomas and illustrated by Floyd Cooper. So the beer has blackberry and blueberry notes to it. It's very berry despite appearances. And this book takes different kinds of berries and compares it and creates poems around different skin tones and complexions with an emphasis on the diverse Black communities that we have in the States. This book has been awarded 2 Coretta Scott King Awards, one for writing, one for illustration, so you know it's really good. Coretta Scott King is, of course, the civil rights leader and was the wife of the Reverend Dr. King. So she got involved with not only writing, but giving out awards for books that showcase African Americans. I like this book so much, I decided to pull out a single stanza to read. It's so good. So one stanza she concludes is we are color struck, the way an artist strikes his canvas with his brush of many hues. Look closely at these mirrors, these palettes of skin. Each color is rich in its own right. And she kind of picks apart these different skin tones, these different berries, as she calls them. There's 13 poems, I think, in total. Each honor different skin tones, each honor different diverse backgrounds. It talks about themes of family. It talks about traditions and feelings. And most importantly, it talks about self-love and acceptance. So understanding who you are and accepting who you are. It's a really lovely book. And the illustrations are just phenomenal, as is the writing. I highly suggest it. I think this is the only copy in the entire library system, so if you guys are interested, you're going to have to throw down over the holds list. But I highly suggest it. And this author also wrote several other kids' books that have just as many accolades. So I highly suggest looking up Joyce Carol Thomas. Pivoting, we have our Halloween books that I got, or this week's Halloween books.
Yes.
So I think we have one more week of Halloween books after this. I don't like murder, really. I'm not into horror. I don't really even like thrillers. But what I do like is Sherlock Holmes, which is weird because he deals with murder and thriller and sometimes the gothic horror of things.
It's easier when you're watching Benedict Cumberbatch.
Right? Always easier. Much easier. And actually, this book, both of the books in this compilation were done by that BBC show.
Oh, okay.
But the one I'm going to talk about today is The Hound of the Baskervilles. Basically, Sherlock Holmes gets called to this country estate, and they say, this phantom hound is killing the family members, and it's going to get the heir next, and you have to figure out what this ghost dog is, and so the plot goes. But I chose it in particular because it's set on a country manor, and this manor is really in like the southwestern part of England where there's a lot of moorland. And when you see the moors depicted in like movies and stuff, it's super windy and rainy, and there's a thunderstorm every 5 seconds.
And Heathcliff's running around screaming.
Right? It's a whole different book plot line. But anyway, the weather like that that makes me want something nice and warm, and I'm gonna cuddle up with a blanket. But like this beer has like cinnamony notes to it and other spices. So I thought, you know, if I can't have a cup of hot cocoa with Baileys, I might as well have this Berried Away, which has this wonderful cinnamon note to it. My last book, this is clearly not a book, it's a print-off, but it's a print-off of the graphic novel version of The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This is another one of those classic tales where I could be scared of it, but it was written so long ago that I don't feel quite as scared or paranoid about it, like I would a murder mystery. But, you know, this has been adapted 500,000 times in 500,000 ways. It has a musical now. The music is beautiful.
I did not know that.
Yes, it does.
Wow.
But you probably know the story of Jekyll and Hyde. It's a guy who drank a chemistry experiment trying to prove a point, and all of a sudden his good side and bad side are ripped apart, and things happen. Yeah. And the only reason I really chose this book was because we have our Berried Away pastry stout. And I look at it and I'm like, this is a dark stout. I expect dark notes and toasty and, you know, yummy other wintry things. But all of a sudden I taste it. It's like a berry pie.
Yeah.
And I get so very confused at the concept of it that I'm like, oh, two different sides. I guess I'll go with Jekyll and Hyde.
None of the beers we've had here so far, I've expected. They've been so good, though.
They've all been phenomenal. But anyway, those are my picks. Your picks sound amazing. I might look into the Jane Austen-esque one.
It's fun. It's a light read after reading a couple scary ones. It's just, you know how Pride and Prejudice ends.
Well, so, of course. But anyway, I think that's our show today. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and feel free to go see some of the other videos that the library has put out.
And thank you to Salty Nut Brewery for having us here today again. We enjoy this every time. Heather and I have a great time together doing this. Thanks.